Which one of the following principles is most clearly operative in the author's reasoning in the passage? So, okay, principles. So it's an extension, the main idea of the passage is making recommendations about how to improve the profitability of New Zealand wool industry. What are the principles that the author would probably agree with? Let's look at the choices. A, an industry that seeks to increase its overall productivity should adopt, on an industry-wide basis, the techniques used by its most productive members. So it should adopt the techniques used by its most productive members. That looks good. The author was recommending that we follow the best practices of those farms that are doing the best, and choose those sheep that are most productive. A is looking mighty good. So let's just see whether B, C, D, and E kind of disqualify themselves for whatever reason. B, increasing the overall productivity of an industry, okay, so far so good, ought to involve requiring the industry's leading members to give aid to the industry's less productive members. So, hey, you most successful members should help and actually give aid to the less productive members. That really wasn't suggested ever in the passage. So I'm crossing out B. C, even if an industry has successfully increased its productivity, it should continue to explore new avenues for reducing costs. So reducing costs, it should continue to explore new avenues. The author is saying, look, we need this genetic research company. We need these best practices in order to increase their productivity. And then sort of stops right there. We don't know about, continuing exploring new avenues. That's a little bit beyond what we can infer from the passage. D, an industry whose productivity is declining should model its business practices on those of its most successful competing industries. Okay, so we do have an industry whose productivity is declining. Okay, should model its business practices on those of its most successful competing industries. So the most successful competing industries wasn't cotton. It was the wool in Australia. And in the first paragraph, the author mentions tough competition with synthetics, but never says anything about the synthetic industry's business practices. D is interesting. I'm going to return to D in a second, even though I like A a lot more. Let's check out E. If an industry's productivity is declining, okay, then that industry should return to the practices it employed at the height of its success. No, the author is saying, no, we need to try new stuff. We need to establish a genetic research company. That isn't something that it could have done at the height of its success, so that's definitely not right. So let's see what the author says about, its most successful competing industries. I'm thinking, cotton, maybe, but I'm not sure it really says much about that. Gains on the order of those achieved by the world's cotton growers, okay, who have been improving productivity at several times the rate of wool growers, so that's definitely a competing industry, can come wholly through better farm management. Okay, so why don't we manage our farm better? It doesn't really say that that's what the cotton growers are doing. It's just saying, look, cotton's doing really well, and we have to, solve the problem ourselves. And the recommendation that the author is making is we're going to do that by managing our farms better and by finally adopting the management and breeding practices of the country's leading wool growers. So the author is saying, no, we got to look within. We got to trust the successes within, the New Zealand industry and expand upon those. So D is out, and we can feel really good about A.